All right, today we are joined by Robert Jacobs of Outlaw Strength in Atlanta, Georgia. Rob's got a fairly extensive history in strength conditioning and personal training. He's been at this for 22 years. He's got an extensive background as well in multiple different sports, both as a competitor in strongman as well as training multiple different sport athletes. He was also very invested inside of the Poliquin world, in that not many people may know this, but Rob was Charles's last client before he passed away 3 years ago. And he was preparing Rob for a strongman competition. At the same time, I actually met Rob in person at the grand opening of Charles Gym on, September 8th, 2018. And it's just been fun getting to know him and talking shop ever since. So, Rob, how would you tell the world basically a little bit more about you?
That was a pretty good synopsis, man. Started coaching before I graduated high school, actually, because I had a back injury pretty much ever since. So I got hurt, and I was good at stuff, and those guys let me help them coach. And as soon as I graduated, I was hired to coach. So I did all the, I guess back then we called it speed development. So I was in charge of all that kind of stuff for several of the teams at the local high school. And I was coaching basketball, started coaching the feeder teams for basketball. So basketball was the first sport I coached like on the court. And then started coaching track and field, and got into MMA. And then strongman. Now we're here. And
I forgot that you did a little bit of MMA. You were actually an extra in a movie, were you not?
I was stunt fighter 1 or 3, maybe 3. It was pretty cool. So my first scene in a major motion picture was a cage fight. And so that was I was actually training a few actors other than the guys in the movie at the time. And they were quite jealous that I got to be in a cage fight.
Sounds like fun. All right. So, Rob, how would you tell us about your education pathway through kind of like the Poliquin world, since how you've been in that for quite a while, as well as what it was like to be coached in strongman by Charles Poliquin?
As you would probably expect, it was pretty awesome. I didn't know what to expect, because I had been, I guess what we would call in like the inner circle for, I don't know, 3 or 4 years at that point. And, so I knew Charles and talked to him all the time, and random FaceTimes, like he enjoyed doing. But I still wasn't really sure. Like I remember I think it was the second phase of training, my workouts fell on having to train on a Sunday. And I was like, I really hate that. Is there, if you tell me to do it, I'll do it. But I really hate that. And it's like, oh, fuck, if you don't like it, we won't do it. It's like, if you're not, if you're not having a good workout, there's no point in doing it. And that was like the first of many of those moments, where it's like, you don't expect someone who's so rigid and not scheduling, but, just rigid in his principles, or, what you would like someone you perceive to be that rigid in his principles. But he's like, fuck, if you're not having a good workout, we don't need to train that day. We'll, take the day off. And I remember the first FaceTime I got from him after we started training was after some god awful posterior chain workout. And I remember he was like, "You're probably as short as me now." And it was like one of the best moments ever, because he didn't even say anything when I answered the phone. He was just like, so that was some of the best parts, man. Because he was just like any other coach, right? Like if you're doing online training with somebody, you talk to that client quite a bit. Like you have a lot of interaction with them, and during that process for the 3 or 4 years he was coaching me, I talk to the guy damn near every day, either FaceTime or, funny memes on something, right? Like there was interaction with my hero, my idol, every single day. And it was huge. It was just amazing. And there was so many like little things that were learned. Like the training on Sunday thing was one of the biggest. And the first.
It's one of the common misconceptions that people have always labeled him with is he's extremely rigid, and if you don't do it this way, well then fuck up. When you just gave an exact example of no, there's more to coaching than simply just ones and zeros on a spreadsheet. There's also that human element, which you just demonstrated right there. He was actually more attuned to than giving credit for probably because of a facade that was put on to many.
Oh yeah. I mean, and he came across that way, but I mean, if you're going to come up with principles and essentially rules to follow, right? Like if you don't treat them like a rule, then what's the point? But like I was having this conversation with one of the coaches that I'm currently coaching, and he was asking about, I don't know, deloads or something like, and my response was what he needed currently. And he's like, well, that's not what I learned in class. So like, I don't give a fuck what you learned in class. You didn't learn your program in class. This program, you will do this on this day because that's what you need. And that's what you need when you're doing this program. It doesn't matter what you learned in class. And I think that's what a lot of, the people who didn't really get direct work with him or didn't do consults with him, like that's the kind of stuff you would learn in those situations is that, yeah, here's all these principles, here's all these rules. This is what works for most of the people, but, you have to adapt these situations or these rules to the person, right? You don't take the person and make them fit these rules, as you take these principles and figure out what works best for this one particular person to get the best result or optimal result.
So let's also go over kind of like your course history through like that world. Like what courses did you take and what would you kind of recommend for younger coaches to this day to kind of look at for foundational stuff, for getting that basic principles down, getting that foundational knowledge and material down pat so that they can start out even another step ahead of their colleague who might have a little bit more experience, but doesn't have that knowledge base?
So the first course I ever took was Biosignature. And I mean, that was just like, holy shit, next level. I think because my course was the 5-day course, which was one of the older versions, I think, because it got shortened. But like before all that, my primary nutritional, philosophy was I'm a strength coach. Go talk to the nutritionist. And the more I did that, the more I started to hear things from, back from clients or from nutritionists that just didn't make sense. And that were, like just dumb stuff. And so it's like, I gotta change this. Because my first exposure to Charles was doing the German body comp for athletes workout. Which I don't know if you remember that article. It was like an mid-early 2000-ish article. Awesome workout. It's brutal. Anyway, so that was what really like turned me on to this guy, because before that, most of my strength and conditioning stuff, because of the MMA background, was with either two things. It was either pure Olympic weightlifting, because that was the first thing I ever did strength training wise, was my first boss my first boss as a real coach, not as the coach of the high school, was and still is one of the top like USA weightlifting guys, instructors. So that like we were, weightlifting purists. So I went from there to like polar opposites, but like learning West Side barbell kind of stuff, and then meshing that for my MMA guys, because the MMA schedule was just like trying to periodize for that was just fucking stupid. So West Side barbell fit perfectly.
Exercise and futility is periodizing for fighting. Yep.
Oh, yeah. It's like, dude, you just fought 2 weeks ago and we're going to fight again. Well, let me just wipe my ass with this 12-week program. And there's got to be a better way. And so, I took the West Side concepts, Louis like, stay ready so you don't have to get ready and, all that kind of stuff, which worked brilliantly for MMA, especially the crew that I had. Because I had MMA, Muay Thai, kickboxing, straight BJJ, one or two Greco guys. That might have been it. But it was a team, so it was all the sports, not just MMA guys. But none of these guys were big name guys, so they didn't have fight camps. These guys were making a living, so if opportunity came up, it was like I don't care that I need 9 weeks to get this fight. And then I finally got a UFC guy, and we actually got to have training camps. It was glorious. Anyway, I don't know why I started talking about that. Oh, yeah. Biosignature. I don't know how we got to Westside Barbell for Biosignature. So when you hear like these registered dietitians say shit that someone in third grade just probably, wouldn't even say off the top of their head. And somebody told me about the course. I think I had it done. And somebody explained the spot reduction concept. And I was like, holy shit, this is really cool. And it really wasn't until that course or those moments that I cared anything about nutrition. And now, I'm like known. Nerd. Yeah, now I'm like known for the biochemistry super nerd. So that's where it started. And then I did a PICP. And then I think I did everything Strength Sensei, or everything that's actually Strength Sensei.
Everything that was Strength Sensei pre-September 26, 2018, we will say.
There we go. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was the good stuff.
Yeah.
So recommending shit. Sorry, I just get off track. The Biosignature I thought was a really good place to start. Like, stepping into that, really not having much of a background at all, I left with a really good concept of, okay, you've got fat hamstrings. Well, maybe this is a problem. And then you just kind of, like Charles designed the training software. It was like the problem tree solution stuff, like here's the issue, go down this path and you get to all the root causes, and then you need nutritional stuff and hormones and supplements and, even training philosophies on stuff like that. And it really started me down the path of like how much more there was to this stuff than eating oatmeal for breakfast and, crap like that. There's a nutritionist told my type 2 diabetic father that he should have more crackers before he goes to bed.
Yeah. So from all this, what we can do is, what we'll get into now is the thing that Rob kind of glossed over there is he's gotten this new fascination, especially with light. So, Rob, since you've kind of gone down the rabbit hole of light therapy, light for different uses at this point, let's touch that rabbit hole a little bit.
All right. It's a deep one, man. So where do you want to start?
Well, let's start right now with you're wearing blue blocker glasses and you're in a room with more red light than I have in my condo right now, which is a little bit more warmer.
All right. So the blue blockers. So the whole light thing really boils down to what it does to the circadian rhythms, right? Now, if you're like me, and I think most people are, the only thing you really know, unless you really get into it, about circadian rhythms is it's when you wake up and it's when you fall asleep. And I mean, the Nobel Prize wasn't won for circadian biology until 2016. So, again, even Charles, who talked about this kind of shit back in the early 2000s he was even 10 years ahead on this kind of stuff. And that's why, like we're seeing the 10 to 15 year lap of 2016. And now this stuff is slowly starting to actually trickle into the mainstream. But it's complex science. And that I think is one of the harder things is because you can't really make a lot of scientific sense of a lot of this light stuff until you start to understand many disciplines in physics and thermodynamics and all these like weird things that I never thought I would be interested in. Two, certainly never thought I would need to know anything about quantum mechanics to understand nutrition or biology or any of that stuff.
Yeah, so let's also look at what's one of the big reasons why you're using blue light blocking glasses right now.
So everybody knows about melatonin, and most people think that you make melatonin at night and that's what makes you fall asleep, and that's kind of the end of it. We actually make melatonin in the morning and you use it at night when the light goes away, but you don't use it until the blue light goes away. And so as these years have gone on, 2016, 2017, so 2017, they actually found melanopsin in the eye. So melanopsin regulates melatonin production because of how melanopsin connects through the intrinsically photosensitive retinal ganglion cells, which leads to the hypothalamus, which then in turn controls all the gears of the circadian rhythm. So that melanopsin, and it's a blue light detector. So when melanopsin detects blue light, you don't make melatonin. So in 2019, they found melanopsin in the skin. So it's not just the eye, but having the red light around you, or most importantly, blocking the blue light around you, is super important. And one thing a lot of people don't either think about or don't understand is that even when you're behind a window, so if I'm looking at sunlight behind a window, I'm still blue light toxic. And that's like kind of weird for people to wrap their heads around. But the light coming through a window is, even though it's sunlight, the light that's getting in is not the full spectrum of natural sunlight. It is still filtered to be energy efficient. So if we don't start taking measures to block these things, I remember I was listening to a podcast, and there was a circadian researcher, and the guy asked him about blocking blue light, and he was like, yeah, I don't really think you need to do that. It's because you're blocking one frequency and one frequency alone. And the whole thing with the window, I think, is one thing that, like, the researcher's looking at the world through a straw. He's seeing everything as we see. We don't see individual colors, but you're neglecting to realize how much more blue light is around us because of things like that, because it's in the windows, it's in the lights that we work under in the gym all day. It's coming out of the TV. It's coming out of the phone that we look at 150 times a day. It's coming out of the computer screen. It's on those bullshit watches people wear. There's all kinds of stuff like that. So if you don't start minimizing one frequency, blue light is always counterbalanced in nature with red light. But when we get into things like windows and screens and technology and all that, there's no longer balance. So if you don't start blocking that excessive blue frequency, you're not seeing an intact spectrum like this guy was saying that we were. And like I said, he's looking at the world through a straw. He's missing a boat on that.
Interesting. So what is the purpose then of those glasses?
Purpose of the glasses is to block the blue light from getting into the eye. It's also directional, right? So I've got a light on over here, so it's not completely, weirdly orange in here. But light's also directional. So blue light from overhead, right? The melanopsin receptors are more towards the bottom of the eye, so they receive light coming from up above, whereas some of the red light receptors in the eye are more on the top, because the fire and all those kinds of lights, sunset is supposed to be lower on the horizon, right? So those receptors are coming in. So it not only matters that you're blocking the frequency, but it also matters where that light's coming from. So the glasses are minimizing the non-native blue light from hitting the melanopsin protein receptor to then disrupting melatonin secretion at night as the light goes away. And you get into a whole bunch of other stuff, but the blue light damages the photoreceptors in the eye, right? So there's a long loop and a short loop in the photoreceptors in the eye that are there to repair the photoreceptors from normal wear and tear, right? Blue light's one of the more intense frequencies, it's shorter wavelengths, it's higher powered, and that damages the photoreceptors. Now it's normal. So under normal circumstances, the short loop, which is just right in the eye, repairs and replenishes the photoreceptors by using DHA. So pound for pound, we've got more DHA in the eye than we have in the brain. So the more foreign blue light you're getting, the more that short loop has to take DHA from the eye. And with the light that we're getting, right, that short loop doesn't take it long to burn out. And once it burns out, the long loop draws DHA from the liver. So the only other option, once the short loop is burned out with the excessive blue light, is to get that DHA from the liver from the diet. And how many people do you know that have an altered omega-3 to omega-6 ratio, right? So you see tons of blue light. We see shitty diets with altered omega-3 to omega-6 ratios. People who aren't doing things like this to block the light, people who aren't even taking omega-3 supplementation, and that leads to things like AMD or acute macular degeneration. It also leads to forward states of dopamine because all these things are made in the eye. It's been very prominent the last few years as we've learned more about melatonin for people that take exogenous melatonin. And we know that after about 2 weeks of taking exogenous melatonin, it thins the retina. So as that retina thins, you start to make this problem even worse, and you're going to make even less endogenous melatonin. So the glasses are much more powerful than most people think they are, at least at face value.
Yeah. So now let's look at the other side of like red light. There's a lot of things out there these days, such as Juve and some other red light devices that people utilize pre-workout even. So what is the use or the purpose behind using like a Juve or other red light therapy device for training purposes?
So for training, essentially the simplest way to look at red light, now this can be an extremely complex answer because red light acts on almost everything in the body. But when you shine red light at the proper frequency on a cell, that cell does whatever it's supposed to do better and faster. So if I've got a biceps workout and I need to increase the function of my biceps, I shine it on my biceps, and all the mitochondria in the biceps work faster. And what it does is because there's proteins in the electron transport chain that are programmed to absorb red light. One of those is complex 4. So when complex 4 gets irradiated with red light, nitric oxide dissociates from that protein. When the nitric oxide dissociates from the protein, that's going to increase blood flow, right? So we're going to get vasodilation from the red light. The other major protein is ATP synthase. Now, ATP synthase is a rotating motor, right? So protons flow through, the head spins, ATP gets spat out of it. Now, that thing spins at 9,000 rotations per minute. When you shine a red light on it, it spins even faster. And with the addition of a red light, that motor actually becomes closer to being 100% efficient. So it usually takes, I think it's 10 protons pumped through to get 2 ATPs. When you shine a red light on there, that number increases, so you get more ATPs per proton. So it enhances the efficiency of that. When we look at other things in terms of work capacity or stuff like that, we know that it's actually the accumulation of phosphorus in the muscle more than it is lactate that decreases coordination under extreme pumps or under the lactic acid feeling, which is fucking bullshit. But if we're making more ATP, you're going to recycle the phosphate, so that phosphorus is going to get out of there, and it's not going to cause problems with calcium efflux, and everything is going to function better. So when the lights shine on the cell, the muscle functions better, it operates better. As far as the eye and the brain go, it's the same thing. So the mitochondria in the brain are going to work better, but visually, dopamine is what is responsible for our perception of the color red. So seeing the color red in a red light prior to training is what enhances dopamine expression a little bit.
So let's simplify that down a little bit for some people who might watch this and start to wonder, okay, what is he talking about? As you break down ATP to do anything muscular activity wise, basically anything requiring energy in the human body, you start to cleave off phosphates from the adenosine triphosphate molecule. It then becomes adenosine diphosphate, and then adenosine monophosphate. So as these cleaved chains of phosphate get knocked off of the adenosine molecule, they start to build up in the muscle. And what Rob is saying is it's not so much the byproduct of actual glucose breakdown in the glycolytic system that creates lactate. It's more of the phosphate molecules itself coming off, being cleaved off that adenosine molecule. And as that buildup and the concentration of those increases within the muscle bellies, the coordination to be able to contract and function at a high rate starts to wane and starts to become a little more, at a certain point, it starts to become pathetic. It doesn't really work anymore. And as he was saying before, in terms of the number of protons are just hydrogen ions. Just think of it that way, because in most textbooks it's going to say, or in most literature it's going to say hydrogen ions. All hydrogen ion is a proton without the electron to go with it. The electron transport change moves these electrons around. Sometimes you get a hydrogen ion that might be positively charged. Sometimes you're going to get it negatively charged. It just depends on if it's gained or lost an electron. So would that kind of simplify a little bit of that, Rob?
Yeah. And if you don't give a shit about any of this, like I said earlier, when you shine red light on a body part, those cells do whatever they're supposed to do better.
Yeah. So that comes down to when you start getting into the physics of light, that has to do with the wavelength as well as the amplitude of the actual light itself. Red light has a shorter, it has a longer wavelength and it's not as frequent, so the frequency is a lot less, whereas blue light is extremely high. And as you get more blue and then into the violets and ultraviolet, that's when you start to run into macular and cellular damage to any organism, which is why we produce evolutionarily substances like melanin, so that we can become more resistant to the sun's ultraviolet radiation, which is just a higher energy frequency of a different light frequency. So just to make things a little more simple for those who might not be as nerdy as we are. So once you start getting into some of the biophysics and biochemistry of the body, it starts to go down a little bit of a rabbit hole, like red light's able to help with certain things. I was at something in Washington, holy crap, almost 2 years ago now, before the world got sick from a beer. And Dr. Ken Kanakin was showing something using, I can't remember what light. So Ken, if you see this, please tell us what the light was. He was using a laser light on the side of someone's head, showing an increase in range of motion that quick. And it was literally on there for 1 or 2 seconds. And then the guy who was a soccer player had better backswing with his leg instantly.
Highlights, I think is the name brand. It's so there. If you don't know what he's talking about, guys, it's glasses that have little bulbs.
Oh no, it wasn't a glasses.
Right?
This wasn't a glasses. It was literally just like a laser pointer type thing that he had.
Okay. So it's I think that's the same mechanism, because that's like all of the eye shit that Charles would do. That's more muscular than it is visual.
Yeah, so the glasses Rob was talking about, the first time I heard about those, it was Dr. Peter Gillette I think he's in Texas.
Yeah.
And yeah, so he's way, like, it can come across as he's out there, but it's more like he's just functioning on a higher level than strength and conditioning world is used to. And that's where there starts to get a disconnect, but he's definitely pushing the edge of what's capable just using light. But those glasses Rob was talking about, where it's got like if you take the frame of the glasses, on the inside, it's got little lights, and depending on what needs to be done, different colors or different frequencies of light will be used, or even I think he even uses different intensities depending on things. But that's something that I'll have to try to get him on one of these, which with his schedule, I'm never going to be able to make that happen.
that would be a cool discussion.
I would probably be lost just because it's not something that's specialty. It's kind of like we would probably lose them if we start talking about periodization schemes to a certain point. Right. But that's so if people are looking for more on light in regards to what we just talked about, Dr. Peter Gillette is someone definitely to look up on that, as well as there's more and more on the applied kinesiology side of things in how light is becoming and different colors and different frequencies of light is becoming more prevalent. And as Rob was talking about, how would a better functioning or like a higher RPM on certain molecules then translate into the performance world?
So it's pretty simple, right? Where if you increase your production of ATP, then all the proteins are going to work faster. And so we know actin and myosin and everything involved in making muscle contract. That's what ATP does, right? ATP is not the energy molecule. There's actually no energy in the high energy phosphate bond. ATP withdraws electrons from proteins. Those proteins change shape, and then they do whatever they're made to do. So if I can increase my production of ATP, I'm going to increase my protein's ability to function properly and faster. So muscles are going to fire faster. They're going to fire stronger. Coordination is going to be enhanced and all of those things, right? Everything's just going to work better and you're going to be sharper and faster.
Yeah. So how can that also play a role in like field sports, which are outdoor field sports that sometimes you're playing under daylight conditions, sometimes you're under the bright lights?
So it goes back to, I think, the regeneration part of it, right? Because you're getting, everybody in our field wants to be so great at detoxing this and detoxing that, and nobody's really catching on board with the whole light toxicity problem, because it's a huge problem. So for guys like us, right? Like we're under the worst possible man-made lights that you could be under, and we're under them 8 to 16 or more hours a day sometimes. So when you get these field athletes who are either in school also under these crappy lights, and then they're playing under these crappy lights, it's probably messing up their circadian rhythms. You can almost be sure of it, right? If they're playing a night game, football kids, the lights are everywhere, then they're staring at their phones. So using the light, again, is going to serve as an attempt to increase balance in the force, right? Because you've got too much blue light, and you've got to get more of the good side of the force in there, which is the red light. And doing the lights is not enough. It's important that everyone understands that there's no substitute for sunlight. One, that's free, right? As Charles used to say, that's my favorite price, free 99. But when you're placed under that situation, right? Like we are at work, or doing these types of interactions, coaching online clients on video calls or doing video presentations. It's a small step that you can do to try to bring some balance to that exchange, where the blue light is less apt to do as much damage as it normally is. So, if I've got a high school athlete, red light will be part of their training program in some form or fashion, whether it's, okay, you can't use my red light device, so you're going to have to be outside at these times for X amount of time, non-negotiable. And if you can't do that, then you've got to wear these at certain times. Or, it's a small step, especially the free portion of it, right? If you can get the kids to go outside, it's life-changing, as it has been for me. But the addition of the red light, again, it's balance.
Yeah. So what times of day are best for getting outside for the red light?
So it's more obvious than you probably think it is, just based on the appearance of the light, right? With the inclination of the sun, the red light is most present first thing in the morning at sunrise and last thing in the day at sunset. And one thing with the receptors that we have in the eyes is the eye perceiving the change in intensity of the light. So perceiving the change of dimmer light getting brighter and then brighter light getting dimmer is super important for setting the rhythms. So a lot of people think like we can leave the gym, go home, put the dark glasses on, and it's going to cure all my problems. Well, the perception of the light dimming is another one of those dominoes that triggers a sequence of things that's supposed to happen naturally. So first thing in the morning at sunrise and in the evening at sunset are the two most important times. 42% of the light, 42% of all sunlight that hits the earth is in the infrared frequencies.
Yeah, so the reason why those times of day you're going to get more red light is if you take a look in the middle of the day, take a look at the sky is the simplest way to do it. The sky is going to be much bluer at high noon type of thing. Whereas in the evening and stuff, the sky starts to become a little bit more red tinged. The reason behind that is blue light is the easiest to scatter within the atmosphere. As soon as it hits, it goes everywhere, but it also goes directly into us. Whereas the red light in the evening, as the red light in the evening is actually getting to us, the sun's actually, for the most part, truly below the horizon. So that direct blue light that would come during the rest of the day when the sun is up, it's not actually getting to us at the same intensity. Whereas red light, because it has a shorter frequency, because the wavelength of red light is much longer, is not going to be as deflected throughout the atmosphere in the evening. So it's actually going to be able to be much redder for us. That's the physics behind the light as to why it's red in the evening and in the morning. There's also more atmosphere for it to go through because it's going through at an oblique angle. So it's trying to cut through more air and more atmosphere. Whereas during the day, it's just coming straight down through it at 90 degrees. So out of all of that, Rob, what would you say would be one of the biggest take homes for people when it comes to light, particularly blue light for performance and sleep?
Blue light is pretty good for performance and shit for sleep.
But there's a reason for that. One of the big reasons is performance. You need to be amped up and ready to go. For sleep, you don't need to be amped up and ready to go.
Exactly. So it's important for people to understand blue light in the morning is responsible for the cortisol awakening response. So why would I want at 7 p.m., 8 p.m., 9 p.m. Before bed, right? So we have to start putting those pieces together. Your brain is meant to respond to blue light in the morning. It's meant to wake you up. I don't want that in the day. And light engineers are so good. There's a reason why the fluorescent lights that are in every office and every school are engineered to have such an extreme spike in the blue frequency because it increases productivity, it increases alertness, all of those things that you get from the cortisol awakening response in the morning. So that you can use that to your advantage, right? Like I wear my some tint of blue blocker all day long now when I'm in the gym, except when I train, because I train right around high noon. I want a lot of light. It does actually give me, oddly enough, now that I've worn them so much, it does give me a little bit of a pick-me-up once I take all these, this stuff off and start utilizing the light. And I actually get the benefits of, increased productivity and enhanced performance. But we have to find the balance there, right there. They did a lot of studies in the 50s and 60s comparing the overhead fluorescent lights versus turning those lights off and natural light coming through the windows, and behavioral disorders evaporated. I mean, within 5 days, of turning the lights off and letting the natural light come in. And it's all, like video documented. You can see the evidence of it. It's fascinating. So, when those things are taken to extremes, just like vitamin C is great, magnesium is great, but if you take too much, you're going to shit your pants. It's the same thing with blue light, right? It's useful. It's in the spectrum for a reason. But when we start utilizing blue light that's not in the spectrum, that's not so good. And you can say the same thing for red light, right? Red light at the wrong time of day also disrupts melatonin at night. So when you're looking at isolated frequencies, you have to be very careful. You can't just turn red light on and, think great things are going to happen. You got to use a quality light for one, because there's a lot of shitty ones out there. And you got to make sure you're using it at the right time of day.
Yeah. So since now we do live in a very high blue light environment, white light environment. So white light has every frequency in it, but blue light is going to be very dominant in it, especially with LEDs now being used on a lot of street lights. Like I look out my window and all the street lights now, like thankfully I'm 22 floors above the lights, but all the lights are now switched over to LED, much more energy efficient. However, you can get fluorescent and even LED lights that are smart. There's smart lights now where it can actually change the coloring of the lights so that as the day goes, it can actually change. I only found out about that from one of my clients the other day. He's an electrical engineer. Of course, he knows that kind of stuff. And you can also get lights for at home that are going to be, instead of them being very white or blue kind of looking, they're much redder looking. They're a warmer light instead of so when you're looking at lights, a cooler light is typically blue and white, whereas a warmer light is more of a red color. I might have switched that. I got it mixed up. If I have, feel free to correct me, anybody, because if I fucked it up, I want to be corrected on that. But you can get lights now that aren't just your standard ones in the office. The office, they're in there to keep you awake so that you do your job. That's the whole purpose behind it. Keep the place lit up and keep you working. But at home, you want to be able to relax, vegetate, and be able to get ready to knock out.
Exactly. So your best alternative light bulbs are in order of optimal: candlelight, firelight, incandescent bulbs, and then halogen bulbs. You have to be careful with lights that dim, because anything that dims emits a higher radio frequency. So you're essentially trading one toxic EMF for another with anything that fades. So for your home lighting, incandescent bulbs and halogen bulbs are two of the best.
And there's also like our screens. We kept on talking about screens and we didn't even actually quickly touch on that. Like I know Apple now has the automatic feature on there that reddens the screen. You can set it to a certain time. I think the standard time is 10 p.m. for that. But you can get that all the way right up to your computer screen. And even like if your computer is attached to your TV, such as in my case, you're able to get it so that the computer dims the screen on your TV. Not necessarily dims, but changes the color temperature of it. So there's apps.
That's actually what's providing the red light for me right now.
Oh, cool. I thought you just had a light on top of your head again.
That would be too bright. You wouldn't be able to see. It's
that's true. Yeah, so there's many ways that we can get around especially in the evenings, even if we're in an environment that has lots of other sources of it, we can mitigate it.
Yeah, so let's talk about the timing of that, right? Your default technological screen temperature is between 5750 and 6500 Kelvin. So that's the same frequencies as high noon sunlight. So only having that on at 10 p.m. is not good, right? What happens? You check your phone at 9 p.m. I just told my brain it's noon. What happens if I check my phone at 7 a.m.? I just told my brain it's noon, right? And that's going to affect all of those chemical cascades that are supposed to come from the, powerful compound pharmacy that we have in our brain. So, on my computer, as you can see, the orangeness now is coming off the TV monitor. It's on all day, right? It's on all day on the phone. And I know that's going to be weird for anybody that decides to do that at first, especially like I don't know if you can tell how orange these are. These are super dark orange.
Because the screen is, because there's an orange hue all around you right now, so everything looks a little orange. So
take my word for it. They're awkwardly orange.
Yeah. So for those of you who also don't know, Rob, his hair is also awkwardly orange at times.
Strawberry blonde.
Yeah, but
not a fucking ginger.
What brand and where did you get those glasses from? For those who want to get them, because we know you've invested in one of, if not the top quality ones.
So the two best that have been tested with spectroscopes are EMR Tech and Blue Blocks. I believe that's BLUBLOX.
Yeah. Well, I didn't realize Blue Blocks is actually that good.
Yeah, theirs are pretty legit. They make two bulbs also that are pretty decent. They make a red bulb and then a full spectrum bulb that are pretty decent. Nothing is better than EMR Tech. Their glasses are the best. Their lights are the best. So they are top notch. And I don't have a discount code. I don't get a discount. I wish I did. Their shit is just the best. So don't waste your money on other lights that you might have heard are good lights, because they are not. Most of those lights are some of the shittiest you will run across.
Yeah. Yeah, so clearly Rob hasn't twerked enough to get himself a discount code or started his own OnlyFans account. So that's going to be a good joke among everyone within our community here.
I think I'd be the only OnlyFans account where people would subscribe to keep me from taking my...
Yeah, so from all of this, Rob, what would you say, we'll use Charles's thing, your one finger in the eye tip from all of this would be?
Be outside, connected to the ground as much as possible. I mean, it's really so simple, and it's free. You need no supplements. You need no products. You need no discount codes. Go outside, barefooted, stand on the ground, be in nature. And this is coming from an indoor cat, right? Like, I was an indoor cat all my life. I hated being outside. Hated it until I started learning this stuff, and now I actually love it. It's just exposing to it and how good it's made me feel. I mean, with all the chemicals we could get into, we are engineered to be addicted to that. We make beta endorphins from that experience. And so if you are fair skinned, right, like you and I are, my skin tone does not do well outside historically. And oddly enough, when I trace it back to all this stuff, I always wore sunglasses. I always wore shit sunscreen. But I mean, within a month of doing this stuff properly, I had some form of tan that was protective, and it's gotten nothing but better ever since. And no sunscreen, no sunburns, no sunglasses, right? Your biology will adapt to it if you adhere to sensible sun exposure, right? Now, that doesn't mean fucking go to Brazil and stay outside all goddamn day if you're pale like me. It means sensible sun exposure. But the one thing, man, get outside, connect to nature.
Yeah. So from that, how can people follow you, get in touch with you? Because I know you also do some coaching education now. So how can coaches get in touch with you, reach out to you, and follow you?
So the easiest way is on my website. It is outlawstrength.com. You can also check out the Instagram, which is Robert C. Jacobs. A lot of free content there. There's actually, I think, a 90-minute presentation I did about light, an introductory stuff. So it's not super sciencey on my website. That's free. So that's a good introduction. Anybody that wants to learn a little bit more about it, that just scratches the surface.
All right. So I'd like to personally thank Rob for taking the time out this evening to do this. So although we talked primarily about something that wasn't truly training related, it is something that is more geared towards general health. And all of us, especially in this community and those who will end up probably watching this on the tube are looking more towards general health and improving that. So while we didn't get into the nitty gritty about sets and reps and fucking loading schemes and XYZ exercise, is the snatch better than the clean for improving lower body power, we got into something that is a little bit not mainstream thinking right now, because our whole thing is being better than the other person. And in order for us to be better, we have to find little legal cheat codes. And if we can do something as simple as, hey, get up in the morning, go for a walk when it's just just starting to get daybreak, and it's able to help someone's performance improve by this much, well, this much, if you're doing high jump, is the difference between gold and silver. If you're doing long jump, gold and bronze. If you're doing shot put at the 2019 World Championships, this is the difference between gold and bronze. It was separated by 1 centimeter. So from that, thank you very much, Rob, for taking the time this evening. One last shout out from you.
Oh, I was supposed to say something. Sorry. Yeah. Thanks for having me, man. It's I appreciate all the stuff you're doing to help, keep the legacy going in the right direction. Outlawstrength.com. Robert C. Jacobs on the Instagram. Anybody wants to know anything about light, let me know.